So I was looking at the November 2024 Watchtower Study Article number 44, How to Cope with Injustice. Now, this is a very mostly self-centered article. A lot of it is what happens if an injustice is done to me. What happens if something unfair is done to me? So I found a couple paragraphs kind of interesting. The first one being paragraph number 6. It reads, "We could react to an injustice by improperly trying to take matters into our own hands. Responding in that way, however, could make matters much worse. Consider the example of King David's son Absalom. He was outraged when his son Tamar was raped by their half-brother Amnon. According to the Mosaic law, Amnon deserved to die for what he had done. Although Absalom's anger was certainly understandable, he was not authorized to take matters into his own hands." Okay, so first off, when it comes to anything Watchtower, governing body, Jehovah's Witness, I have a hard time believing in coincidences, and anytime they use an example that has the R word or anything related to that, it kind of raises an eyebrow and a very not good feeling in my gut. And if you know anything about the CSA, etc., you probably understand why. It's a little bit more than cringy. But that aside, I find this example actually rather interesting. So, let's break it down a little bit. What actually went on with Absalom? Well, here's kind of the Reader's Digest version of it. Amnon became infatuated with his half-sister Tamar. He ends up molesting Tamar. Absalom finds out. King David finds out. And a few years later, Absalom has Amnon killed for what he did to his sister. Now, there's a big part of this, and big part of the reason that Absalom acted outside of the law was because his father, King David, who, in a matter of speaking, was the law and should have done something, was inactive. He didn't do anything to bring justice for Tamar against Amnon. So that little detail raises some very interesting thought processes in my head when it comes to this particular paragraph. See, if a Jehovah's Witness sees another Jehovah's Witness doing something wrong, now I'm not just talking something that is considered wrong according to the Watchtower. I'm not talking about a Jehovah's Witness sees another Jehovah's Witness buying a pack of smokes and a lottery ticket. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if a Jehovah's Witness sees another Jehovah's Witness breaking the law, who are they going to contact first? Now, in an ideal world, you could say, well, obviously they're going to, maybe depending on what the circumstances are, they're going to contact the police first. And in an ideal world, I would say, amen, that's exactly what they would do. But the reality is that many, if not the majority of Jehovah's Witnesses, will go to the elders first, and perhaps only. There is a court case going on right now down in North Carolina of a Jehovah's Witness who is under trial for the rape and murder of his cousin. The family, when this happened, did not contact the police first. The first phone call that they made was to the elders in their congregation. Yeah, I'm just jumping in while editing this, and during the time of this recording, Derek Ward was found guilty by a jury of his peers and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the rape and murder of his cousin. Just so we know. You can look that up. It's the Derek Ward case in North Carolina. He blamed Demon. He tried to claim that she was possessed and that he was trying to help her. It's a fascinating and very, very dark case. If you're into that kind of true crime stuff, it's definitely one to look at, and it's a really good example of the issues and like mental health issues that can come along with being in that community. So yeah, just a little side note that he was found guilty of all charges. Alright, back to the video. Now that's an extreme case, but that's kind of the point. That these ones, in the most extreme cases, and you don't get much more extreme than that, will contact the elders before they contact the police. Another example could be that so-and-so is having some kind of medical emergency and someone calls the hospital liaison committee before they call for an ambulance. I don't know of any examples of it happening, but let's be honest, it would not surprise me to learn that something like that has happened. So let's look at paragraph 6 again. What exactly is the message that they're trying to convey here? Now, this is purely my opinion, my kind of rambling thoughts. You might agree, you might not agree. I get the feeling that a lot of you listening will probably agree to some of, if not all of this, however. Especially if you're an ex-witness. I feel like the unwritten message in this is this. I'm going to read this paragraph a little again, but I'm going to read it a little bit differently. We could react to an injustice by improperly trying to take matters into our own hands. Responded in that way, however, could make matters much worse. Consider the example of Brother Y. He was outraged when his daughter was molested by another brother in the congregation. According to Watchtower, this brother deserved to be disfellowshipped and brought to justice. Although Brother Y's anger was certainly understandable, he was not authorized to take matters into his own hands. I very, very, very strongly feel that this is the message being portrayed in this paragraph. when it says that he was not authorized to take matters into his own hands, what is the implication here? Now, again, my opinion solely. But I strongly feel like the not authorized to take matters into his own hands is talking about going, quote unquote, over the elder body's heads. In other words, if it said that Brother Y was in the wrong because he contacted the police, I think that's what they're saying. I really do. The idea that what Absalom was improperly trying to take matters into his own hands is partially true. However, as I mentioned before, a big part of the reason that he did this was because the law did not act. King David did not act. Now, if you're following my train of thought here, you might kind of get an idea of where I'm going with this. Because if in this example, Absalom is the brother or sister who sees another brother or sister doing something wrong, especially something that's illegal, and Amnon, of course, is that brother or sister who would do something wrong, something illegal, and the Mosaic law is the elders the Mosaic law / King David is the elders. If it wasn't so tragic, it would almost be funny. If it wasn't so tragic, it would almost be funny. Because it's saying that if you see an injustice, if you see something terribly, terribly wrong, my opinion, and you were a Jehovah's Witness, you are to go to the elders. Like Absalom, or King David rather, was supposed to act, the elders are supposed to act. Strangely enough, this is almost a perfect, actually almost perfect example for them to use in the Watchtower. Because much like King David was ineffective many, many times, so were the elders. And if my analysis, again, is correct here, I'm putting the elders in the place of the Mosaic law / King David in this example. That things could have been avoided had King David / the elder body acted. But then it says that Absalom was not authorized to take matters into his own hands. Which is kind of a comparison fallacy. I don't know if that's the exact correct phrasing, Well, I'm going to go with it. See, you're kind of comparing apples and oranges here. Absalom had his half-brother assassinated, had him murdered. So, to correct one wrong, he chose the path that brought him down another wrong. However, does that mean that if a brother sees another brother doing something wrong, something horrific, like CSA, or a murder, whatever, does him calling the police on this brother, does that equate to the same as him doing something illegal against that brother? Are they telling, without telling, your average Joe's Witness that you are not authorized to take matters into your own hands, i.e., you were not authorized to contact the legal authorities? That is their job. And again, we've seen, and there are many cases, there's a major one again in North Carolina, where the first phone call made was to the elders, not the police. So this mindset is part of the Jehovah's Witness culture. And to compare, because once again, this is my opinion, and I'm kind of reading between the lines here, but it's very hard not to read between the lines on something like this, but what they're actually saying. To compare a man who committed murder in revenge against what happened to his sister, to compare that to calling the police before you call the elders is deplorable. And sadly, it's no real shock. Now, the other paragraph I found quite interesting was paragraph 15. The question is, why is it best to wait on Jehovah to correct the matter? The paragraph reads, we benefit when we wait on Jehovah to correct the matter. If we do so, we will be spared the burden and frustration of trying to solve the problem ourselves. Jehovah offers to help us. He says, as it were, leave the injustice to me. I will take care of things. If we accept Jehovah's promise, I will repay, we can let the matter go, confident that he will handle it in the best possible way. That is what helped John mentioned earlier. He said, if I can just wait on Jehovah, he will handle it far better than I can. Now, first of all, I would love to commend the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society and the writing committee for including several scriptures in this paragraph to support their statement. sarcasm all mine. It is interesting that they don't add a single Bible verse, either quoted or mentioned in this, but they will say that something that Jehovah might be saying. You could have quoted the actual scripture was God speaking. There are plenty of scriptures about putting your burden on God, etc., that they could have used here, but they didn't. That's, yeah, it's interesting. That aside, first off, this is again very vague. And I hate to use this subject again, but it is a blight on the witnesses. It is a dangerous thing. It is a heartbreaking thing, and it is an important thing. And that, of course, is the rampant CSA and other abuses that happen within the world of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Because if you see, again, something happening, you're privy to something that's happened, you have knowledge of something that has happened, something bad, something serious, something illegal, that burden is already on you. For example, where I live, and I'm sure there are many other places, states, provinces, countries, etc., that have something similar. Where I live, if you have knowledge or even suspicion, you don't even have to have hard evidence. It can be hearsay. But if you have anything like that regarding the abuse of a child, you yourself have the legal burden, the legal, not even right, duty to contact the police or child services to report it. You, the individual, have to do this if you even think that something might be being done to a child. It doesn't say about going to somebody else. It doesn't say you should go to your clergy or, well, whoever. It doesn't say that you should go and tell the elders and trust that they will contact the police or child services or whoever it is in your part of the world. And I would suggest you look into that wherever you live. Find out. Because here's how serious it is. If you know that something has been done to a child and you do not report it, you can be arrested, spend time in jail, or have a very, very heavy fine. Now, of course, the reason for reporting the abuse of a child should not be that you want to avoid prison time or a heavy fine. It should be because there is a child being abused and it needs to be stopped. But regardless, if your motivation is because you don't want to spend time in the clink and you can't afford a $10,000, $100,000, whatever it is, fine, you do you. But either way, the legal duty and the legal burden is on you to go to the authorities. Now, that might be a frustration for you. Frankly, I don't care. Frankly, no one should care. Romans chapter 13, verse 1. Let every person be in subjection to the superior authorities. For there is no authority except by God. The existing authorities stand placed in their relative positions by God. In other words, God is the one who ordained for there to be authorities, like the police, like the legal system where you live, like the law of the land. And when the law of the land, when the government says that you need to do something regarding the abuse of somebody else, you need to take action. That is the thing that God put in place to take care of things. Now, once again, this paragraph is very vague, and there is definitely a spectrum of things that can be considered an injustice. And there are certainly things that you can just kind of let go and you'll be fine. There are definitely other things that do need action. So, what about the governing body themselves? What about the organization itself? Surely, they would follow this direction themselves if there is something that is an injustice, something done wrong to them, or perhaps their property, something like that, that they, instead of trying to take care of things themselves immediately, they would just pray about it and let Jehovah take care of it. Right? From the Shepherd the Flock of God book. Now, if you're not familiar with Shepherd the Flock of God, and you're a witness, try going to the book counter next meeting and asking for a copy. Actually, don't, because if you are a Jehovah's Witness, especially a sister, and you are not an elder, you are not supposed to know this book exists. It's basically the super secret elders manual. And there are some very strict rules about how it is to be used by an elder. You can look into that yourself. But, chapter 21, point 31, this is under incidents. Here's what it says. When property damage occurs, quick action can go far into preventing further damage. Break-ins, thefts, arsons, or other incidents of vandalism should be promptly reported to the local authorities. The local design/construction department, LDC, maintenance trainer may be contacted for direction. I'm going to read that first sentence again. When property damage occurs, quick action can go far in preventing further damage. And the next sentence, should be promptly reported to the local authorities. In other words, when an injustice is done to something that belongs to the organization, Jehovah's Witnesses, Watchtower Bible Tract Society, whatever you want to call them this week, if something happens to their stuff, the direction is to promptly report to the local authorities. Not wait on it, not pray about it and, pay God. Should we call the cops on this? That's not what they're saying. There's no waiting on anybody, not even God, in the action here. So I would ask myself, why is it that, and it doesn't have to be matters of a legal, like your car got broken into, or your house got broken into, someone slashed your tires, whatever. Or even something smaller than that. But are you still supposed to just wait on Jehovah in a situation like that? And I know that sounds silly, and you're probably going, well, of course not. But really, in this paragraph, where is that line drawn? Where is that distinction made? Now, you might think, well, that's a personal matter. Okay, fine. Maybe it is. Now, again, in terms of connecting this to paragraph 6, which is talking more about when we see an injustice done against somebody else. I mean, the Bible is extremely mute on all things about dealing with injustices. It's not like it says at Psalms 82 and 3, give justice to the weak and the fatherless, maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. It certainly doesn't say at Isaiah 1:17, learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression, bring justice to the fatherless, and please the widow's cause. Or Micah 6 and 8, he has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Well, what about Jesus himself? When he saw injustice being done, did he take action right away, or did he wait on his Father? It's almost a rhetorical question. Of course, he took action right away. And he spoke up against the Pharisees, who instead of encouraging justice, was the cause of most of the injustice. or at least a lot of it. Sure, a lot of it was the Romans, but there was a lot of oppression done by the rules of the Pharisees. Luke 11, verse 42. But woe to you, Pharisees! For you tithe mint and rue and every herb, and neglect justice and the love of God. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others. The Pharisees, according to Jesus, neglected justice. Jesus cared about other people. Jesus saw that they needed help, that they were burdened by what was being done to them. And then he saw the ones who were supposed to be stepping up to the plate to help the disenfranchised, the needy, the poor, the widow, the orphan, etc., etc., etc. And he saw that instead of them encouraging justice for these ones, they were adding more weight to an already bad life that they had. And this is all purely, as I mentioned before, my opinion. But with the example of Jesus and other ones in the Bible, should the desire for justice against injustice of any kind be something that never requires action on our part? Especially when it comes to things that have happened to somebody who is not capable of seeking it themselves. And again, the paragraph here and the article, it's very vague. It could be talking about, someone hurt your feelings in the Kingdom Hall. Because they do mention, what if there's injustice done against you by a fellow brother or sister? Okay. If it's something minor, and it's up to you to decide what's minor. If it's something minor, you can probably just let it go, depending on what it is. But when it's something that is universally considered to be major, especially if it is being done to somebody who, again, is not able to express or seek justice for what has been done to them. Are we more like Jesus? Or are we more like the Pharisees if we just sit back and, quote unquote, let Jehovah handle it, because we do not want the burden and responsibility of taking action? This is Sound the Alarm. Have a good day.